The stars had watched the galactic hegemony rule for 10,000 years. 12 species bowed before the throne of stars. They paid tribute. They obeyed without question. They had forgotten what freedom meant. The High Sovereign sat upon his crystalline throne on the crown world of Vastes Prime. His body was made of violet flesh stretched over bones that looked like purple glass. He was ancient. He was powerful. He had never known defeat. When his sensor arrays found Earth, he did not think twice. Another primitive world. Another species to conquer. Another tribute to collect. He sent Ambassador Veth with 50 warships. The fleet arrived in Earth's solar system on a cold morning in December. Their ships were massive. Each one was larger than a city. They blocked out the sun as they took position above the blue planet. Veth looked down at Earth and felt nothing but contempt. These creatures had barely touched their own moon. They still fought wars among themselves. They would kneel quickly. The transmission went out to every screen on the planet. Every phone. Every computer. Every television. The face of Ambassador Veth appeared before 7 billion humans. "I am Veth of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien said. His voice was cold like cracking ice. "Your world now belongs to the throne of stars. You will submit. You will pay tribute. You will surrender your weapons. Resistance is not possible. You have 30 of your solar cycles to comply." The transmission ended. Panic swept across Earth. People ran through the streets. Governments called emergency meetings. Military forces went on high alert. But what could they do? Their weapons were toys compared to the ships hanging in the sky. In New York, the United Nations assembled every world leader. They gathered in the Great Hall with pale faces and shaking hands. Above them, through the glass ceiling, they could see the shadow of an alien dreadnought. Captain Tae-Won stood at the back of the hall. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes. He wore the uniform of the Korean Space Force. He had spent 20 years preparing for threats from beyond Earth. He had always known this day would come. Beside him stood Dr. Yuna. She was small with sharp eyes behind thin glasses. She was Earth's best xenolinguist. She had spent her life studying the possibility of alien contact. Now that it had happened, she felt sick to her stomach. "They mean it," Yuna whispered to Tae-Won. "I analyzed their speech patterns. They have done this before. Many times. How many species have they conquered?" Tae-Won asked. 12 that we know of. Maybe more." Tae-Won nodded slowly. "And how many refused?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. "None. None have ever refused." On the stage, the leaders argued. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to negotiate. The American president spoke of humanity's spirit. The Chinese chairman spoke of practical reality. The Russian president spoke of pride. Then Ambassador Veth appeared again. His holographic form materialized in the center of the hall. Guards raised their weapons, but Veth only smiled. His teeth were like shards of broken crystal. "I see you debate," Veth said. "This amuses me. Let me show you what debate means to the hegemony." A holographic display appeared around him. Images of conquered worlds. Cities burning. Species in chains. Monuments destroyed. Cultures erased. "The Vreth debated for 3 days," Veth said. "Now they mine our ore. The Mendeli debated for a week. Now they farm our food. The Korath did not debate at all. They attacked us." He paused. "There are no more Korath." The hall was silent. "You have 29 cycles remaining," Veth said. "Choose wisely." He vanished. The debate continued for 3 more days. Yuna barely slept. She studied everything they knew about the hegemony. Their technology. Their tactics. their history. The more she learned, the more her heart sank. They are not lying, she told the assembly on the third day. They have destroyed entire species. They have the power to do the same to us. Then we must surrender, said the European Council leader. We must think of our children. If we surrender, our children will be slaves, said the Indian Prime Minister. At least they will live, someone shouted. Tae-won had heard enough. He pushed through the crowd and walked to the stage. Guards tried to stop him, but he ignored them. I am Captain Tae-won of the Korean Space Force, he said. His voice was steady. I have spent my life studying warfare. I have studied these aliens for 3 days. And I have something to say. The hall fell quiet. They expect us to kneel, Tae-won said. They have never met a species that refused. That is their weakness. They do not know how to fight someone who will not give up. We cannot win, someone said. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. I did not say we would win, Tae-won replied. I said we would not give up. There is a difference. He looked around the hall at the frightened faces. If we kneel today, we kneel forever. Our children will be slaves. Our grandchildren will forget what freedom means. But if we stand, if we fight, we show the galaxy that some species cannot be broken. Maybe we die, but we die free. And maybe, just maybe, we hurt them badly enough that other species find the courage to stand too. The hall was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Yuna stepped forward. He is right, she said. I have studied their history. The hegemony rules through fear. If we show that we are not afraid, everything changes. We are afraid, the Brazilian president said softly. We are all afraid. Yes, Yuna said. But being brave does not mean having no fear. It means standing up even when you are terrified. The vote happened that night. 193 nations. 193 votes. The result was not unanimous. Some voted to surrender. Some abstained. But when the count was finished, humanity had given its answer. 147 nations voted to resist. Tae-won sent the response to Ambassador Veth himself. It was a single word transmitted on every frequency they could reach. No. Veth received the message in his command ship. He stared at the screen for a long time. His crystalline bones creaked as he leaned forward. In 10,000 years, no species had ever refused. He opened a channel to Tae-won. You do not understand, Veth said slowly. We do not negotiate. Tae-won's face appeared on the screen. His eyes were calm. His voice was steady. Neither do we. Veth cut the transmission. He stood in silence for several minutes. Then he contacted Vastes Prime and requested the punishment fleet. The High Sovereign received the news with surprise. A species had refused? Impossible. Unthinkable. But also intriguing. Send the punishment fleet, he commanded. Make an example of them. 50 dreadnoughts began their journey to Earth. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. They would arrive in 3 weeks. On Earth, humanity began to prepare. They knew what was coming. They knew their chances were small. But they had made their choice. They would not kneel. In the command center beneath the mountains of Korea, Tae-won gathered his officers. We have 3 weeks, he said. 3 weeks to prepare every ship, every weapon, every soldier. 3 weeks to show the galaxy what humans are made of. Yuna stood beside him. What if we fail? She asked quietly. Tae-won looked at her. For the first time, she saw a small smile on his face. Then we fail standing up, he said. And the stars will remember that we tried. Outside, the alien ship still hung in the sky. But something had changed. The humans looking up at them were no longer just afraid. They were angry. And anger, as the galaxy would soon learn, was a very human weapon. The punishment fleet came from the darkness between stars. 50 dreadnoughts. Each one was the size of a small moon. Their hulls were black as night and covered with weapons that could melt cities in seconds. They moved in perfect formation like a fist closing around Earth. Admiral Veth watched from his command ship. He had crushed rebellions before. He had burned worlds to ash. This would be no different. These humans would learn their place. But when the fleet arrived, something was wrong. Earth was dark. The cities that had blazed with light were now black. The orbital stations that had floated above the planet were silent and empty. No ships flew. No signals broadcast. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. "Where are they?" Veth demanded. His sensors swept the planet. They found the humans underground. Billions of them packed into bunkers and tunnels and caves. They had buried themselves like insects hiding from a storm. Veth laughed. "They think they can hide from us. Begin the bombardment." Crack their hiding holes open. The dreadnoughts moved into position. Their weapons charged with a sound like thunder. In moments, they would begin erasing everything humanity had ever built. Then the darkness around Mars came alive. 200 ships burst from the shadow of the red planet. They were not warships. They were cargo haulers, passenger vessels, mining craft. Ugly machines held together with welding and hope. But each one was packed with nuclear warheads. Each one was crewed by volunteers who knew they would not come home. Lieutenant Hannah sat in the command chair of the Indomitable. She was young, 26 years old. She had been a cargo pilot before the aliens came. Now she was leading humanity's first attack against an enemy from the stars. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. "All ships," she said into the fleet channel. "They think we are primitives. They think we will break easily. Today, we show them what primitives can do. For Earth, for our families, for everyone who refused to kneel." 200 voices answered her. For Earth, the human fleet charged. Veth watched them come with something like amusement. These crude vessels against his dreadnoughts. It was not even a battle. It was an execution. "Destroy them," he ordered. Plasma cannons fired. Beams of burning light cut through space. Human ships exploded. 10, 20, 30. Their shields were weak. Their hulls were thin. They died in seconds. But they kept coming. The first human ship reached the dreadnought and did something Veth had never seen. It did not try to fight. It did not try to flee. It accelerated directly into the dreadnought's hull and detonated its nuclear payload at point-blank range. The explosion was massive. The dreadnought's shields flickered. They held. But the ship behind the first one hit the same spot. And the ship behind that one. And the one after that. 3 suicide runs. The shield collapsed. The fourth ship punched through the hull and detonated inside the dreadnought. The mighty warship broke apart. Veth stared in disbelief. A dreadnought. Destroyed by cargo haulers. It was impossible. It was impossible. But it was happening. All across the battle, human ships were ramming hegemony vessels. They were ejecting their crews in escape pods and turning their vessels into guided missiles. They were detonating nuclear weapons against shields until those shields failed. They were dying by the dozens, but taking hegemony ships with them. Hannah flew the Indomitable through a storm of plasma fire. Her ship was burning. Half her crew was dead. But she had one warhead left and she could see her target. A dreadnought with damaged shields. A weak spot where 3 ships had already hit. "This is Lieutenant Hannah," she broadcast to any human who could hear. "Tell my mother I love her. Tell Earth we did not kneel." She aimed for the weak spot and pushed her engines to full power. The Indomitable hit the dreadnought at maximum speed. The nuclear warhead detonated. The dreadnought's reactor went critical. 2 ships died together in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, the human fleet was gone. 200 ships destroyed. Thousands of volunteers dead. The escape pods drifted through the wreckage, carrying the survivors who had ejected before their ships made their final runs. But the hegemony had paid a price. 11 dreadnoughts destroyed. More ships than they had lost in the past 100 years. 39 more were damaged. Some badly enough that they would need months of repairs. Veth stood on his bridge surrounded by the bodies of his crew. His own ship had been hit twice. He had barely survived. He looked at the tactical display and could not believe what he was seeing. They had lost. Against primitives. Against cargo ships and mining vessels and passenger craft, held together with nothing but courage. On Earth, Admiral Dohuan watched the battle from the command bunker. He was an old man with white hair and tired eyes. He had sent those volunteers to their deaths. He had known most of them would not return. It was the hardest order he had ever given. But they had done it. They had hurt the enemy. General Yumbi stood beside him. She was younger than Dohuan, but her hair was already turning gray from stress. She commanded Earth's ground forces. If the aliens landed, she would lead the resistance. They will send more ships, she said quietly. Yes, Dohuan agreed. They will. Can we do this again? Dohuan was silent for a moment. The truth was heavy on his tongue. No, he said. We used everything we had. Every ship, every volunteer willing to make that sacrifice. It will take years to build more. Yumbi nodded slowly. Then, we need a different strategy. We need to survive, Dohuan said. Long enough to learn. Long enough to adapt. Long enough to find their weaknesses. Above Earth, the surviving hegemony ships began their bombardment. Cities burned. Landmarks that had stood for centuries turned to ash. The great structures of human civilization crumbled under alien fire. But the bunkers held. The tunnels protected their people. Humanity survived. In his damaged command ship, Veth sent his report to the High Sovereign. He did not try to hide the truth. He had underestimated these humans. They were primitive, but they were not weak. They fought without regard for their own lives. They used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They were dangerous. The High Sovereign received the report in silence. 11 dreadnoughts. Lost to primitives. It was embarrassing. It was infuriating. It was also interesting. Send more ships, he commanded. But do not underestimate them again. These humans are like wild animals. They must be broken slowly, carefully, until nothing remains of their spirit. More ships began their journey to Earth, hundreds of them this time. Enough to darken the sky. Enough to crush any resistance. But in the bunkers beneath the burning surface, humanity was already planning. Tae-1 gathered the surviving military leaders. They had lost the first battle. They had lost their fleet. They had lost millions of people. But they had proven something. They can be hurt, Tae-1 said. They can be killed. Their ships can be destroyed. Today, we showed the galaxy that the hegemony is not invincible. Yuna sat beside him. Her eyes were red from crying. She had lost friends in the battle. She had watched their ships explode on the tactical display. But her voice was steady when she spoke. The other species are watching, she said. The Vreth, the Mendeli, the Korath survivors. They saw what we did today. They saw us fight back. Will they help us? Someone asked. Yuna shook her head. Not yet. They are too afraid. But fear can become hope. And hope can become action. We just need to keep fighting long enough for them to find their courage. Outside the bunker, the world was burning. The aliens were winning. The odds were impossible. But deep underground, humanity was not giving up. They had drawn first blood, and they were just getting started. Taewon looked at the faces around him. Soldiers, scientists, leaders, ordinary people who had become extraordinary because they refused to accept defeat. "This war will be long," he said. "It will be hard. Many of us will not live to see the end. But someday, our children or our grandchildren will walk under free skies. They will look up at the stars and know that their ancestors did not kneel." He raised his hand in a fist. "For Earth." 100 voices answered him. For Earth. The war had begun, and humanity had no intention of losing. 5 years passed. The war continued. Earth was a wounded world. The great cities were ruins. The oceans were poisoned by debris from fallen ships. The sky was gray with ash from fires that burned for months. Billions had died. Billions more lived like rats in tunnels beneath the surface. But humanity had not broken. The hegemony controlled the skies. They controlled the surface. They had bases on every continent. Their soldiers walked through the ruins of human civilization like conquerors. Yet they could not sleep peacefully. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Commander Jinho led the wolf packs. He was a thin man with scars on his face and ice in his eyes. Before the war, he had been a mining engineer. Now he was the most feared human in the solar system. The wolf packs were guerrilla squadrons. Small ships. Fast ships. Ships built from salvage and stolen parts. They hid among the asteroids and waited for hegemony supply convoys. When the convoys came, the wolves attacked. Jinho sat in the cockpit of his ship, the Silent Fang. Around him, 30 other vessels waited in the darkness. Their engines were cold. Their systems were quiet. They were invisible against the rocks and ice. "Contact," his sensor officer whispered. "Hegemony convoy. 12 cargo ships. 4 escort frigates." Jinho smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "The frigates will protect the front and rear," he said. "They always do. We hit the middle. Fast and hard. Take what we can. Destroy what we cannot take. Then we vanish. And if they chase us, then we lead them into the graveyard." The graveyard was a section of the asteroid belt filled with wrecked hegemony ships. Ships that had chased the wolf packs into ambush. Ships that had learned too late that the asteroids belonged to humans now. The convoy came closer. The frigates scanned the area but found nothing. The wolf packs were too small, too quiet, too good at hiding. Jinho gave the signal. 30 ships erupted from the darkness. They did not fire weapons. Weapons made noise. Weapons gave away position. Instead, they used magnetic harpoons to attach to the cargo ships. They cut through hulls with plasma torches. They stormed inside with guns blazing. Jinho led the assault on the largest cargo ship. His team moved through the corridors like ghosts. The hegemony crew never saw them coming. In 3 minutes, the ship was theirs. "Take the food and medical supplies," Jinho ordered. "Plant charges on the rest. We have 4 minutes before those frigates figure out what is happening." His people worked fast. They had done this many times. They knew exactly how long they had. They knew exactly what they needed. 3 minutes and 40 seconds later, the wolf packs detached from the convoy and scattered into the asteroids. Behind them, the cargo ships exploded. Fire bloomed in the darkness of space. The frigates gave chase. They always did. It was a mistake. It was always a mistake. Jinho led his pursuers through a narrow canyon between 2 massive asteroids. He knew every rock, every shadow, every hiding spot. The frigates did not. The first frigate hit a mine that had been placed months ago. The second frigate flew into an ambush where 10 Wolfpack ships waited with captured hegemony weapons. The third frigate made it through the canyon, only to find Jinho waiting on the other side. "Welcome to the graveyard," Jinho said over an open channel. Then he fired. The tactics of the Wolfpack spread across the solar system. On Mars, resistant fighters used the same methods. On the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, human survivors formed their own packs. They hit supply lines. They ambushed patrols. They made the hegemony pay for every inch of space they tried to hold. On Earth, the resistance was even more fierce. Sergeant Myri organized the insurgency on what remained of the surface. She was a farmer's daughter from a small village that no longer existed. The aliens had burned it in the first month of the war. She had watched her family die. She had sworn revenge. Now she taught other survivors how to fight. "They have better weapons," she told her recruits in a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of Seoul. "They have better armor. They have better training. But they do not understand this world. They do not understand us." She showed them how to make bombs from industrial chemicals. She showed them how to set traps in the ruins. She showed them how to disappear into tunnels that the aliens could not navigate. "The hegemony thinks they have conquered Earth," Myre said. "They have not. They have only occupied it. And we will make that occupation cost them dearly." A resistance cell struck that night. A hegemony patrol was moving through the ruins of the old city center. 20 soldiers in heavy armor. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. The first explosion took out the lead soldiers. The second explosion collapsed a building onto the middle of the patrol. The survivors tried to regroup, but Mireille's people were already firing from the shadows. They did not try to win the fight. They just wanted to hurt the enemy and escape. 4 hegemony soldiers died that night. 3 more were wounded. Mireille lost 1 fighter. It was not a victory. It was barely even a battle. But it was something. It was proof that Earth was not safe for the invaders. It was proof that humans would not stop fighting. Far beneath the Antarctic ice, another kind of resistance was happening. Dr. Sujin led a team of scientists in a secret laboratory. They had been working for 5 years on Project Prometheus. Their goal was simple, but almost impossible. Learn how hegemony technology worked. Find its weaknesses. Build weapons that could fight back. Sujin was exhausted. She had not seen sunlight in years. She had not spoken to her family since the war began. She did not even know if they were still alive. But she kept working because she had to. Because humanity needed her. "The shields," she said to her team one morning. "I finally understand the shields." She showed them her calculations. Months of work. Thousands of failed experiments. But finally, an answer. "Hegemony shields operate on harmonic frequencies," she explained. "They create a barrier by vibrating at a specific pattern. If we can disrupt that pattern, the shield collapses." "How do we disrupt it?" her assistant asked. "We need to generate a counter-frequency, a wave that cancels out their harmonics." She paused. "I know how to do it. But the device will be large. Very large. And it will take years to build." "We do not have years," someone said. Sujin looked at them with tired eyes. "Then we work faster." They built the first harmonic disruptor in 3 years. It was the size of a building. It used more power than a small city. It was ugly and crude and barely functional. But it worked. The test was conducted on a captured hegemony drone. The drone had shields that human weapons could not penetrate. They had tried everything. Bullets, missiles, lasers. Nothing worked. Sujin activated the disruptor. The drone's shields flickered. They flashed. They collapsed like a soap bubble popping. For a moment, Everyone was silent. Then the laboratory erupted in cheers. Sujin did not cheer. She was already thinking about the next step. They needed to make the device smaller. They needed to make it portable. They needed to put it on ships. She sent a message to the War Council. One sentence that changed everything. We found their weakness. In the ruins of what had once been the United Nations headquarters, the human leadership gathered. Taewon was there. He was older now. His hair had turned gray. His face was lined with worry and pain. But his eyes still burned with determination. Yuna stood beside him. She had become more than a translator. She was now humanity's chief intelligence officer. She knew more about the hegemony than any other human alive. General Yumbi commanded what remained of Earth's military. Commander Jinho attended by hologram from his hidden base in the asteroids. Sergeant Myray represented the surface resistance. And Dr. Sujin explained her discovery. If we can build enough disruptors, she said, we can fight them on equal terms. Their shields are their greatest advantage. Without shields, their ships are just machines. Machines can be destroyed. How long to build enough for a fleet? Taewon asked. 2 years. Maybe 3. If we have the resources. Jinho spoke up. The Wolf Packs can get you resources. We have been capturing hegemony supplies for years. Tell us what you need. Everything, Sujin said. We need everything. Taewon looked around the room. For the first time in 5 years, he saw hope on their faces. Then, we give her everything, he said. Every resource. Every person. Every ounce of effort we have. In 3 years, we strike back. Not to survive. Not to resist. To win. Far away on Vasti's Prime, the High Sovereign received reports of the growing human resistance. The Wolf Packs, the surface insurgency, the rumors of new weapons. For the first time in 10,000 years, he felt something cold in his crystalline heart. These humans were not breaking. They were getting stronger. He did not know fear. He was too ancient for fear. But he recognized danger when he saw it. Increase the pressure, he commanded. Send more ships, more soldiers. Crush them before they become a true threat. But deep in the Antarctic ice, Sujin was already building the weapons that would change everything. And humanity was learning to be wolves. Year 7 of the Human Hegemony War. Admiral Taewon stood on the bridge of the Unconquered. It was humanity's first true warship. Not a converted cargo hauler. Not a mining vessel with weapons attached. A warship built from the ground up to fight the hegemony. The ship was beautiful in a brutal way. Its hull was black and angular. Its weapons bristled from every surface. And deep in its core, a harmonic disruptor hummed with power. A weapon that could strip away hegemony shields like peeling skin from fruit. Around the Unconquered, 300 more ships waited. The Liberation Fleet, built in secret over 3 years. Crewed by volunteers who had trained in hidden bases throughout the solar system. Armed with technology that the hegemony did not know existed. Admiral, said Commander Yuri. She was Taewon's tactical officer. A young woman with sharp eyes and a mind like a computer. All ships report ready. The fleet is at your command. Taewon looked out at the stars. Somewhere ahead, beyond the darkness, lay Vasti's Prime, the Crown World. The seat of hegemony power. The home of the High Sovereign who had ordered Earth's destruction. 7 years, Taewon said quietly. 7 years of running. 7 years of hiding. 7 years of watching our people die. And now? Yuri asked. Tae-1 turned to face his bridge crew. Men and women from every nation on Earth. Scientists. Soldiers. Engineers. People who had lost everything. and refused to give up. Now we take the fight too. Them. The Liberation Fleet jumped to faster than light speed. They used hegemony technology that Sujin's team had reverse engineered. Stolen knowledge turned into human weapons. The journey took 3 days. When they emerged from hyperspace, Vastes Prime hung before them like a jewel in the darkness. The crown world was beautiful. Purple oceans, golden continents, cities that glittered like diamonds. The heart of an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years, and defending it was the largest fleet Taiwan had ever seen. "Contacts," Erie reported. Her voice was calm, but her face was pale. 200 warships, 60 defensive platforms, multiple orbital stations. "They knew we were coming," someone said. "Of course they knew," Taiwan replied. "We wanted them to know. We wanted them to gather their forces here, all in one place." He opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Admiral Taiwan. 7 years ago, the hegemony came to our world and demanded that we kneel. They expected us to surrender. They expected us to break. They were wrong." He paused. Around him, every human in the fleet was listening. Today, 12 enslaved species are watching. The Vreth, the Mendeli, the Korath, all the others who knelt because they thought they had no choice. Today, we show them that there is always a choice. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you try to enslave humanity. His voice hardened. Today, we end the hegemony. All ships, engage. The battle began. The hegemony fleet moved to intercept. Their ships were massive and powerful. Their weapons had destroyed countless enemies. They had never known defeat, but they had never faced humans with harmonic disruptors. The first wave of human ships fired their disruptors. Beams of invisible energy swept across the hegemony formation. Shields flickered. Shields collapsed. For the first time in 10,000 years, hegemony warships were vulnerable. Human rail cannons fired. Solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds punched through unshielded hulls. Explosions bloomed across the hegemony fleet. 3 kills, Yuri reported. 5 kills. 8 kills. "Admiral, it is working." Taiwan did not celebrate. The battle was just beginning. The hegemony adapted quickly. They spread their formation to make the disruptors less effective. They targeted the human ships carrying the devices. They fought back with the fury of an empire that had never been challenged. Human ships died. The brave heart exploded under concentrated fire. The dawn's light was cut in half by a plasma beam. The eternal hope rammed a hegemony dreadnought when its engines were destroyed, taking the enemy ship with it. But humanity kept pushing forward. Commander Jinho led his Wolfpacks against the defensive platforms. His people knew how to fight in chaos. They knew how to find weaknesses and exploit them. They danced through the battle like shadows, striking where the enemy was weak. "Platform 7 is down," Jinho reported. "Platform 12 is down. We are making a hole." The hole opened in the hegemony defense. A path to the planet below. "All ground assault teams, begin your approach," Taiwan ordered. Drop pods launched from the human fleet. Hundreds of them falling toward Vastes Prime like steel rain. Each pod carried soldiers in powered armor. The best humanity had. Volunteers who knew they were probably going to die, but went anyway. Major Yunji led the ground assault. She had been a young lieutenant when the war started. 7 years of fighting had turned her into something harder than steel. She had lost count of how many battles she had survived. She had stopped counting the friends she had buried, but she remembered why she fought. Her drop pod hit the ground near the Throne of Stars, the palace of the High Sovereign, the symbol of hegemony power, the place where the decision to destroy Earth had been made. "All teams form up," she ordered. "We are taking that building." The battle on the ground was brutal. Hegemony soldiers fought with desperate fury. They knew what was at stake. If the High Sovereign fell, the Empire would fall with him. Yunji led her marines through the palace gates. They fought through corridors of crystalline stone. They cleared room after room. They paid for every meter with blood, but they did not stop dot above them. The space battle continued. The human fleet was taking losses. Terrible losses. But the hegemony was losing more. Their shields were useless. Their tactics were failing. For the first time in history, they were being beaten. Throughout the galaxy, the other species watched. The Vreth saw hegemony ships exploding. The Mandali saw human soldiers storming the Crown World. The Korath survivors, hidden in remote corners of space, saw their masters dying. And something changed in their hearts. Something that had been dead for thousands of years. Hope. Yunji reached the throne room. The great doors were sealed. Her demolition team placed charges and blew them open. Inside, the High Sovereign waited. He was ancient. His crystalline body was covered with cracks and scars from ages of existence. His eyes burned with violet fire. He sat upon his throne as if nothing in the universe could move him. "So," he said, "the primitives have come." Yunji raised her rifle. "Your empire is over." The High Sovereign laughed. It was a terrible sound, like breaking glass. "You cannot kill me. I am eternal. I am the hegemony. I have ruled for 10,000 years. I have crushed 100 rebellions. I have destroyed species that were old when your kind was still crawling in the mud." "Maybe," Yunji said, "but you have never faced humans. Humans." The High Sovereign spat the word. "You are nothing. Insects. A momentary annoyance. Even if you kill me, another will take my place. The hegemony is eternal." Yunji walked toward him. Her soldiers spread out around the throne room, their weapons trained on the ancient ruler. "You are right about one thing," she said. "We are not like the others. We do not care about your age or your power or your empire. We care about one thing. And what is that?" Yunji stopped in front of the throne. She looked up at the creature who had ordered the deaths of billions of her people. "Freedom," she said. "And you cannot take that from us. No matter how many ships you send, no matter how many soldiers you deploy, no matter how many worlds you burn, you cannot break what we are." She raised her rifle. "The hegemony is over." One shot. The High Sovereign's crystalline head shattered. His body slumped on the throne. 10,000 years of tyranny ended with a single human bullet. For a moment, the throne room was silent. Then Yunji opened her communication channel. "All forces, this is Major Yunji. The High Sovereign is dead. I repeat, the High Sovereign is dead." In space, the hegemony fleet heard the news. Something seemed to drain out of them. Their firing became erratic. Their formations broke apart. Some ships surrendered. Others fled. Others fought to the death. Admiral Tae-1 watched the enemy fleet crumble. "It is over," Yuri said. There were tears on her face. "We won." Tae-1 shook his head slowly. "The battle is over. The war is over. But our work is just beginning." He looked at the crown world below. 12 species had been enslaved by the hegemony. 12 species were now watching to see what humanity would do next. "Open a channel," he said, "to everyone, every world, every species, every ship." The channel opened. "This is Admiral Tae-1 of Earth. The hegemony is defeated. The High Sovereign is dead. The war is over." He paused. "We came here for justice. We came here for freedom. We came here because no species should be forced to kneel before another. But we did not come here to become your new masters. We did not fight to build another empire." His voice softened. "To the Vreth, the Mendele, the Korath, and all the others who suffered under the hegemony. You are free. Not free to serve us. Simply free. What you do with that freedom is your choice. Throughout the galaxy, billions of beings heard his words. Some wept, some cheered. Some simply stood in stunned silence, trying to understand what had happened. The humans had won, and they wanted nothing but friendship. In the throne room, Yunji looked at the body of the High Sovereign. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a tired emptiness. So many had died to reach this moment. So many would never see the freedom they had fought for. She turned to her soldiers. Let us go home. The aftermath of the war changed everything. Humanity could have claimed the hegemony's throne. They had the power. They had the fleet. They had the right of conquest. For 10,000 years, this was how the galaxy worked. The strong ruled. The weak served. Everyone expected the humans to take their place as the new masters. They were wrong. Admiral Tae-1 stood before the gathered representatives of 12 worlds. The meeting took place on a space station above Vastes Prime. The throne room had been sealed. No one would sit on that throne again. The representatives looked at Tae-1 with a mixture of fear and confusion. The Vreth ambassador was an insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the light in strange patterns. The Mendele speaker was an aquatic being in a water-filled suit. The Korath elder was made of silicon and crystal, similar to the High Sovereign, but smaller and less imposing. They had all knelt before the hegemony. They expected to kneel before humanity now. We did not fight to become what we destroyed, Tae-1 said. His voice was tired but firm. We fought because no thinking being should be forced to kneel before another. Not to us. Not to anyone. Ever. The Vreth ambassador clicked his mandibles in surprise. You do not want tribute? No. You do not want slaves? No. Then what do you want? Tae-1 smiled. It was the first real smile he had allowed himself in 7 years. Friendship, he said. Fair trade, peace. The chance to explore the galaxy together instead of fighting over it. The representatives looked at each other. This was not how empires worked. This was not how power worked. They did not understand, but they were willing to try. The Galactic Commonwealth was born that day. Not an empire. Not a hegemony. A federation of equals. Each species kept their own worlds. Each species made their own laws. They came together only for trade and mutual defense. Humanity took no special position. They asked for no special treatment. They were just another member of the Commonwealth. Some thought they were foolish. Some thought they were weak. Some thought it was a trick. But as the years passed, the galaxy learned the truth. Humanity simply believed that freedom was more important than power. And they were willing to defend that belief. Dr. Yuna became Ambassador Yuna. She spent decades building bridges between species that had been enemies for millennia. The Vreth and the Mendele had fought wars for thousands of years. She helped them find peace. The Korath had been nearly destroyed by the hegemony. She helped them rebuild. She was patient. She was kind. She never gave up on anyone. Understanding is hard, she told a young diplomat who was frustrated with a difficult negotiation. It takes time and effort, and the willingness to see things from another point of view. But it is worth it. Every friendship we build makes the galaxy a little better. Commander Jinho returned to Earth with his wolf packs. They were heroes. Songs were sung about their raids. Children played games pretending to be wolf pack pilots, striking from the asteroids. But Jinho did not feel like a hero. He had done terrible things during the war. He had killed without mercy. He had sent young people to die. He had become something hard and cold to survive. Now he needed to learn how to be human again. He spent his remaining years teaching at the new Academy of Defense. He trained the next generation of soldiers. But he did not teach them to be wolves. He taught them that war was humanity's last resort, never its first. Fighting is easy, he told his students. Any fool can pull a trigger. The hard part is knowing when not to fight. The hard part is finding another way. Some of his students listened. Some did not. But enough understood that when the next crisis came, they tried diplomacy first. Sergeant Myray went back to farming. She found a piece of land that had not been too badly damaged by the war. She planted crops. She raised animals. She lived quietly. People sometimes came to visit her. Young people who wanted to hear stories of the resistance. She always welcomed them. She made them tea. She showed them her garden, but she rarely talked about the war. What is there to say? She would ask. We did what we had to do. We survived. Now we live. She died peacefully at the age of 87. Her grave marker was simple. It said only, she refused to kneel. Dr. Sujin continued her research. With the war over, she finally had the resources she needed. Her team developed new technologies that helped rebuild Earth, clean energy, advanced medicine, faster-than-light communication. She was offered many honors, medals, titles, positions of power. She refused them all. I did not do it for glory, she said. I did it because it needed to be done. Now there is more work to do. She worked until the day she died. Her last project was a device that could clean the pollution from Earth's oceans. It worked perfectly. The oceans were blue again within 10 years. Major Yunji became General Yunji. She commanded the Commonwealth Defense Force for 20 years. She never started a war, but she ended several. Some species did not want peace. Some warlords and tyrants tried to build new empires. Yunji stopped them. Not with cruelty. Not with revenge. Just with firm determination. The Commonwealth does not seek conflict, she would say before each battle. But we will not allow slavery to return. Stand down, and you will be treated fairly. Fight, and you will lose. Most chose to stand down. The ones who did not learn that humans were still very good at fighting and Admiral Taiwan. He retired to a small farm in his homeland, a quiet place in the mountains where the air was clean and the stars were bright at night. People came to visit him sometimes. Leaders seeking advice. Young officers wanting to meet a legend. Historians trying to understand what had happened. He welcomed them all. He answered their questions honestly, but he never claimed to be special. I was just a man who refused to kneel, he would say. Anyone could have done the same. They always argued with him. They said he was a hero. They said he had saved humanity. They said he had changed the galaxy. He would shake his head and smile. We all changed the galaxy, he said. Every person who fought. Every person who resisted. Every person who refused to give up. It was not me. It was us. 300 years later, a young Vreth historian visited Earth. She wanted to study humanity's archives. She wanted to understand how such a young species had defeated an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. Her human guide was a descendant of Sergeant Myray, a farmer's daughter like her ancestor. Simple and kind. The Vreth asked many questions. About the war. About the tactics. About the technology. The guide answered them all as best she could. But one question puzzled the historian more than any other. You were outnumbered, the Vreth said. Outgunned. You had no hope of victory. Your chances were nearly zero. Why did you fight? The guide thought about it for a moment. She looked up at the sky where human ships now traveled freely among the stars. She thought about her ancestor who had taught farmers to make bombs. She thought about all the people who had died so that she could stand here today. Because hope is not about odds, she said finally. It is about what you refuse to accept. And we refuse to accept chains. The Vreth nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. Your people are strange, she said. You fight when you cannot win. You forgive enemies who tried to destroy you. You build bridges instead of empires. Yes, the guide agreed. We are strange. But perhaps, the Vreth said thoughtfully, that is why you won. The guide smiled. Above them, the stars shone down on a free galaxy. Ships from a dozen species crossed the void in peace. Old enemies worked together. Old wounds were healing. It was not perfect. There were still problems. There were still conflicts. There was still suffering. But there was also hope. And in the end, that was what humanity had given the galaxy. Not conquest. Not tribute. Not fear. Hope. The hope that even the weakest could stand against the strongest. The hope that freedom was worth fighting for. The hope that tomorrow could be better than today. Humanity did not kneel. Not when the hegemony demanded it. Not when the odds were impossible. Not when everyone else had given up. And because they did not kneel, the galaxy learned something that it had forgotten for 10,000 years. That courage is contagious. That freedom is precious. That even the smallest flame can light the darkness. The humans had taught them this. Not with words. With actions. With sacrifice. With the simple refusal to accept defeat. And the galaxy was better for it. Forever.